Hey guys, we're checking out that trial again.
Mother
Started this over.
to the hospital where shortly thereafter he was pronounced dead. He had no significant medical history and reportedly did not complain of being ill during the day of his death. There also was no history of injuries received in any events on the days preceding his death. Autopsy revealed numerous petechiae on his face and in the eyes. There were skin scrapes on the front of the neck and bruises in the muscles of the neck. Toxicological examination was negative. The autopsy findings are consistent with an asphyxial death due to strangulation. And strangulation, you'll hear, is the impairment of blood supply to the brain by compression of the vessels and other structures of the neck. The manner of death is homicide. Martin Osinski's body was a crime scene, and Dr. Havlick will walk you through that crime scene. Dr. Havlick, his opinions were not pneumonia, not asthma, not aspirating on anything. How Martin came into that deathbed as he laid there at St. Mary's Hospital. We have to present evidence as to what was going on in the house. What was going on in Martin Osinski's house, right? How that little boy who maybe cost some money and had to be taken places and played video games a little too much and pooped his pants. How did that cause the collapse of parenting? The collapse of the position of trust Mr. Thrailkill was entrusted. Martin Osinski went from that playful, Minecraft-loving, ready to learn, eager to read little boy to lying dead at St. Mary's and later on the exam gurney of Dr. Havlick when he did the exam on July 4th of 2016. And the facts that led up to that started with officers who responded to Trailer 67 on July 2nd, 2016, and started with this lady over here, Christine Gregory. Christine Gregory in 2016 worked for the Grand Junction Police Department. She's sitting in the middle over here at the table. You were introduced to her briefly during jury selection. You'll hear from her in this case. And what you'll hear from that witness stand, the summary of the evidence as to what happened that night is this. 5 people were in trailer number 67 on the evening of July 2nd, 2016. Martin Osinski and his mother, Darin Thrailkill, and Darin's 2 children. And Darin's 2 children, Sean Thrailkill and Alex Thrailkill. Sean was 8 on July 2nd, 2016, and Alex was 6. Sean and Alex were visiting Mr. Thrailkill and living in the trailer with Mr. Thrailkill and Crystal and Martin. And they were coming over, they were sent over here so Mr. Thrailkill could exercise his parenting time. Their mother was Christiana Chantal Thrailkill, and she lived in Denver. And Sean and Alex had arrived a couple weeks before Martin's death. And so it was the five of them in the home on the evening of July 2nd. Crystal, Martin's mother, was watching a movie on a laptop on the big couch in the living room. She had headphones on. Mr. Thrailkill was playing games on his desktop computer in the living room. Sean and Martin were playing video games. Alex was playing video games on a different console. And at some point, Alex and Crystal fell asleep. Martin left the living room and never returned. Remember what I talked about? One of those issues Martin has, really not uncommon. 6-year-old. He had an accident, and that accident ended up being his fatal flaw. Mr. Thrailkill reached his breaking point. Strangled Martin Osinski. At some point had woken up Crystal. Crystal raced out of trailer 67 and into her car with Martin and just raced him to the hospital. She arrived shortly before 11 p.m. on July 2nd. You'll see video of Crystal trying to save her son's life. You'll hear Crystal's voice, how panicked she was, how devastated she was. Crystal Osinski was Martin's mother. Christine Gregory was at the emergency room when Martin was pronounced dead. She immediately took photos of his body. These photos illustrated the petechiae that you'll hear about in this case. Martin's eyes, behind his ears. Noticed, did Christine Gregory, half moon-shaped marks on Martin's neck and what looked like scratches. When Christine Gregory grabbed Martin's hand to photograph his palms, to do what she needed to do as a police officer, he was cold to the touch. So you'll hear that Darin Thrailkill's family didn't care for Crystal Osinski, and that she and Mr. Thrailkill were struggling as a couple. But Crystal Osinski was Martin's mother, and he was her everything and she was his. While Christine Gregory was at the hospital gathering evidence, officers responded to trailer 67. You'll hear from some of these officers, right? The first officer you'll hear from is Jason Evans. Jason Evans and his colleagues, Patrick Bridge and Mark Goodell, responded to the scene. They each made different observations, slightly different observations in a very short amount of time. And they noticed some inconsistencies that were noted and were obvious, at least to them. Inconsistencies with how somebody should act when they just learn that a 6-year-old to which they were entrusted to be a caring parent and loving and providing parent, how does that look? Right? After being told of Martin's death, Mr. Thrailkill had some fleeting reference to, wondering how Crystal was at the hospital. But after he was told, Mr. Thrailkill, of Martin's death, officers noted that he really didn't ask about Martin. He didn't ask about, well, how'd he die, right? He didn't ask, well, I need to, I need to get to the hospital. Can you give me a ride? Can you watch my kids while I go? Shortly after being told Martin had died, Darin Thrailkill had sent a text message to his own dad, who was alive at the time. Darin had texted, "Something happened with Martin, and I think he is gone. I'm sure they're going to pin me because I'm the only one with a record, but I think it was Sean. OMG, IDK, what to do? Oh my God, I don't know what to do." It was Sean. Remember Sean? His son visiting from Denver, 8 years old. Oh, there were stressors certainly in that household. Custody issues with his own children. When I say that he was exercising his parenting time, he was. He wasn't too happy with Sean and Alex's mother. In fact, he was infuriated by the condition in which they presented when they arrived a couple weeks before he murdered Martin Ozinski. He was having, Mr. Thrailkill, financial issues, personal injury issues, difficulty in maintaining a blended family. Talked about that in jury selection, and those are common things. He was drinking alcohol when he wasn't supposed to. And he was trying to parent Martin. There's some prior conduct of Mr. Thrailkill that we'll talk about. You'll remember there was some discussion of this during jury selection, but this is what we expect to be presented. There's some conduct between Darin Thrailkill and his son, between Darin Thrailkill and Martin. Prior words that Mr. Thrailkill said before July 2nd, 2016. You'll hear that in 2012, April Yates, a Mesa County Department of Human Services caseworker, responded to a call. She was part of the child intake team, and she had responded to a call where Sean Thrailkill in 2012 had bruising all around his lower back. And when she talked to Sean Thrailkill, one of the issues that was brought up too in jury selection, we'll talk about and present from the witness stand, is how do you interview a kid, right? How do you not lead a kid or trap them or lead them down a road that you want them to go to? How do you let them just tell their story? Well, April Prock at the time, but April Yates asked Sean numerous times, how'd this, what happened? And Sean said, Daddy did it. You can only consider that for specific purposes, and Judge Flynn will give you a specific instruction on that. You can only consider that to explain identity or motive or intent, or to rebut any argument of mistake or accident. You can't consider it for any other purpose. The incident I mentioned with Martin was also in 2012. There was a skull fracture Martin had, and you'll hear about that skull fracture and the nature of that, and how it was after some time Martin had spent with Mr. Thrailkill that this injury was observed and documented. And again, you can only consider that for specific reasons that Judge Flynn will tell you about, such as identity, motive, intent, or to rebut any argument of mistake or accident. Martin Ozinski later, a couple years after that, 2015, had told another DHS caseworker, Aletha Jenkins, that Daddy hurts me bad. Again, can only be considered for very specific things. You'll hear that in 2016, after Mr. Thrailkill strangled Martin Ozinski, that there were several interviews conducted. And Ed Prescott, you'll hear a lot from Ed Prescott. Ed Prescott has a job like some of you now, right? He's retired. But in 2016, he was a detective with the Grand Junction Police Department. He was working with Christine Gregory and investigating this case, and he did a lot of interviews. He interviewed Mr. Thrailkill a couple times. He interviewed the children.
You know, I really wish that I could see this guy talking. It makes me wonder if we're going to be able to see the witnesses when the witness talks, but I think we will be able to. That camera on the right is now on the witness stand. But I really would like to see the prosecutor.
The murder, he was recorded on a pretext phone call with Crystal, Martin's mother. And during that 2 weeks, they didn't even talk. But all of a sudden on July 15th, they talk, and these phone calls were recorded. And you'll hear Mr. Thrailkill and Crystal Ozinski in those calls. Mr. Thrailkill can't deal with Crystal deciding when things are okay and not okay. Mr. Thrailkill, have I gotten pissed at him in the past, referring to Martin? Yes. Have I spanked his ass red? Yes. You know these things. If you are talking to him and feeding him information, we ought to stop talking. Him, remember 8-year-old Sean Thrailkill? He's not too happy with his assumption that Crystal's talking to Sean. Because Sean observed some things on July 2nd. Remember when I said that Martin disappeared into the back room and never came out alive? Sean's testimony in court here will be that of an 18-year-old whose father is sitting here, right, being charged with murder. But Sean's statements will be that from the days following the murder. We'll play those relevant portions of those for you. Mr. Thrailkill, he stated, I don't understand what's going on with Sean. His being upset, his anger, his fucking rage, his word, not mine. You will hear that Darin Thrailkill blamed his own son, Sean. That's what Sean looked like in July of 2016. That's what Mr. Thrailkill looked like. And that guy in both photos with each of them is Ed Prescott. Remember, I told you that Mr. Thrailkill wasn't too happy. He was talking to, Crystal was talking to Sean. Sean was interviewed in the days after the murder. That little 8-year-old boy right there. And he was saying stuff like, well, I just embarrassed myself because I don't know like this because I just don't know. This is not my business really. How does an 8-year-old know to say this isn't my business? I don't know. I don't really know about it because it's personal to them. That sound like something an 8-year-old would say. You get to decide. You'll hear the interviews. Mr. Thrailkill was still suggesting that Sean did it. In these interviews that he did with Detective Prescott, he never admitted to doing this to Martin Hozinski. But Mr. Thrailkill didn't even admit that Martin had an accident that night. Even after, in the days leading up to the murder, talking about needing to get pull-ups for Martin, all the while, Mr. Thrailkill's DNA was found in the middle of feces that were left in some underwear. When Crystal went to sleep on July 2nd, fell asleep watching a movie with those headphones on, she had noticed Martin wearing things different than what he was wearing when she raced him out of trailer number 67 and into St. Mary's Hospital. Again, Martin's fatal flaw, he pooped his pants. That's a photo of Martin's room, and those underwear in the bottom right corner were collected and later tested and came back. A swab of the middle of the fecal matter in that underwear returned to Mr. Thrailkill's DNA. DNA profile, very strong match. Again, Sean Thrailkill was interviewed trying to get everything that an 8-year-old can say and remember and articulate. And he'll say that Martin, he said in 2016, Martin was in the shower and Daddy came and woke Crystal and she raced out with Martin. Martin doesn't go to the bathroom when he's supposed to. Martin poops his pants and it really stinks. Crystal gets upset. Daddy gets really upset and usually busts his butt. That's what 8-year-old Sean Thrailkill told Ed Prescott in the days following Martin's murder.
This makes me
Sean
sick.
Was also interviewed by another DHS worker, Carrie Hoffman. The next day after Martin's murder, Sean had made the following statement to Carrie Hoffman when asked, what does it mean to be safe? That's an adult asking Sean Thrailkill, what does it mean to be safe? Sean Thrailkill said, no killing, no hearts not beating, no getting punched in the face, getting beat down to the ground. It was also noted that Sean, a day after Martin was murdered, stated that the worst thing that can happen is that something happened, someone says it's his fault, and he gets blamed for it, and the cops take him to jail when he didn't do it. Throughout this case, the presentation in this trial, but over the years, Mr. Thrailkill's conduct was taking no accountability as a parent. His demeanor is inconsistent with learning of Martin's death. Lack of action that Mr. Thrailkill takes is really not in line with the gravity of the situation. And what Darin Thrailkill does in that moment is nothing. He denies hurting Martin and blames everyone else for everything. In fact, he blamed that 8-year-old son of his. In the time since Martin Osinski was murdered on July 2nd of 2016, Mr. Thrailkill, maybe it was a stuffed animal, maybe a pillow. What about Sean? Soon after the murder of Martin Osinski, Darin Thrailkill gave up his kids, basically. He didn't think he was suitable, his house was suitable. And that was shortly thereafter telling a Department of Human Services caseworker, Jackie Berry, in the weeks after the murder, Mr. Thrailkill met in person with Jackie Berry. And he told her that he wanted to obtain his own home and have a home that will accommodate his 2 children, Sean and Alex. And he feels now his children are his top priority. And he hopes to have a home within a month. He told Jackie Berry that on July 19th, 2016. They've never lived with him since. In fact, Detective Prescott met with Darin Thrailkill in Delta one day in 2017. It's August 23rd, 2017. Detective Prescott still doing things and investigating, doing what he did. Took a buccal swab from Mr. Thrailkill, just a DNA sample. And within a week of Detective Prescott doing that, Darin Thrailkill was starting a new life in Florida. He moved in with Xavier Stokes, his cousin. Xavier's mom is Lisa Tagliente. Those two lived with Lisa's mom, who's since passed. But Darin Thrailkill moved in with them. This was somebody who they really never, they'd met before. They'd come out to Colorado and met him. But they really didn't have much interaction with Darin Thrailkill, and in he moves, right? They start splitting expenses, and he's on with his new life. He's working, nothing pro-social, not a bunch of friends coming around. Not seeing his kids, Sean and Alex. Not even talking to him. Taking on his new life. The ongoing efforts to locate Mr. Thrailkill and the years intervening, some concepts that were discussed in jury selection, the process of the system, right? No one wants to rush to judgment. But a variety of efforts were made to try to locate Mr. Thrailkill. Law enforcement, both here and in Florida, were running into dead ends with the family of Mr. Thrailkill. In fact, Mr. Thrailkill's father passed in May of 2022, and Mr. Thrailkill didn't even come back for the funeral. A funeral at which, for sure, anybody would know his kids would be there, his family. Not him. He FTA'd, failed to appear for the funeral. Then comes 2023. In 2023, Christine Gregory goes to Florida and interviews Mr. Thrailkill. You'll hear relevant portions of that interview. And we also have jail phone calls that Mr. Thrailkill had with his Aunt Lisa. Once Mr. Thrailkill was arrested on a warrant for him for committing murder, he was talking to Aunt Lisa, and she was concerned about trying to help him with his property. Sell everything, get rid of it, liquidate it, right? Those are his orders to Lisa. He also told Lisa last October, 2 Octobers ago now, in 2023, he also told his Aunt Lisa that he wants to talk it down to what it really probably is supposed to be. And if I can't get that, then I don't know, because if this goes to trial, it's going to be a shit show and I'm going to lose anyway. I'm going to try to get it knocked down to manslaughter and then eat fucking bullet, do like 7 or 8 years or whatever. He had told Detective Gregory in her interview of him around that same time that he remembers some of what happened before, some of what happened after. And he was wondering when you were coming for me. He himself defined petechiae. And he said stuff like that doesn't happen unless there's pressure involved. He mentioned the 6-year delay and also mentioned that his life's ripped apart now. This case is about Mr. Thrailkill reaching his breaking point, that strangulation of Martin Hosinski on July 2nd, 2016. You don't ghost your kids. You don't run from innocence. And that innocence in this case, idealistic was a word that was used in jury selection, real. That boy, Martin Hosinski, was in Mr. Thrailkill's care when he was murdered. The summary of the evidence here, Dr. Havlick, somebody with thousands of head-to-toe anatomical autopsies, not a paper review, not some natural cause. Cause was strangulation to death. Manner, homicide. Sean Thrailkill will present in court as an 18-year-old now. And his statements from 2016 will be, 2016 will be played for you. The defendant's conduct will be important to note in this case, as his words and his admissions of guilt on that call, and that interview down in Florida. If there's something in this case, in the presentation of this case, that just, you need a question, you need to ask a question. If there's an interview that's playing and you don't quite hear something, just note the time on the screen and then ask that question. We can loop that back for you. Take notes, because at the end of the day, your collaboration with each other when you go to the deliberation room, you get to decide if we've met our burden in proving beyond a reasonable doubt that Darin Thrailkill murdered by strangulation 6-year-old Martin Hosinski on July 2nd, 2016. We believe the evidence will prove that. Thank you.
Ms. Marsic or Ms. Parham, sorry. Thanks. Martin was sick, not strangled. On July 2nd, 2016, a normal day ended in absolute tragedy. The death of 6-year-old Martin Osinski can only be described as a tragedy of the absolute greatest proportion. There's no denying or minimizing that simple fact. It's that tragedy, the death of Martin, that led to this case. The reason why you all are here, why we've asked you to give weeks of your time to sit here in trial, is because this tragedy was not a murder. Martin was sick, not strangled. After years of trying to fit pieces into a puzzle that just didn't fit, trying to find evidence to prove a murder where there was none, new medical testing and analysis not done in 2016 revealed the answer not seen in 2016. The answer that accounts for all the signs of asphyxiation then noted, and also accounts for the other clues shown by the evidence that were ignored or disregarded, downplayed as unimportant, because they didn't fit a theory of murder in this case. After years of uncertainty, the evidence revealed by medical testing, evidence, analysis, is that Martin died of some combination of pneumonia, aspiration, and asthma, not murder. Darin Thrailkill is not guilty. On July 2nd, 2016, like I said, it started as an otherwise normal day. Mr. Thrailkill, his then girlfriend, Crystal Osinski, Martin's mom, Martin, and Mr. Thrailkill's 2 kids were at the house pretty much all day. The kids were running in and out, I think mostly outside, playing in the pool pretty much the whole day until it started getting dark. Bugs started coming out, they all went inside. They had dinner, and then everyone hooked up to their various devices for the night. You'll hear the kids were all in the living room playing video games or watching movies on 2 TVs that were set up in the living room. Mr. Thrailkill was zoned in, headphones on, playing games on his computer. Miss Osinski was zoned in, headphones on, watching a movie on her laptop. At some point, Mr. Thrailkill went to check on Martin, and as soon as he did, he immediately knew that something was wrong. Got Miss Osinski, they got Martin in the car, she rushed him to the hospital, he was pronounced dead shortly after. The investigation into Martin's death started immediately from that point. Everyone, officers, doctors, everyone at the house wanted the same thing, answers, an explanation for how this 6-year-old kid died. There were 4 other people in the house that night. The investigation started there, understandably, right? But as you'll hear, one thing that became clear over the days, the weeks, the months, and then years that followed is that it wasn't clear to anyone what happened. Everyone remembered that day, that night, the moments prior to and following Martin's death slightly different. You'll hear from Miss Osinski. You'll hear how she told officers, what she told officers varied from interview to interview. She described different things about how she woke up, who found Martin, who went in the room first, what she said. You're going to hear Miss Osinski describe her relationship with Mr. Thrailkill, his relationship with Martin, the dynamics of their household at this time. I'm not really sure what Miss Osinski is going to say now, 9 years later. But what was clear, genuine, automatic, what she said 9 minutes, 9 hours, a month after Martin died, is that Mr. Thrailkill wouldn't do this. It didn't make sense. This is not how he responded to Martin. It didn't add up. You're gonna hear a different version of events from the second person in the house, Sean Thrailkill, 8 years old at the time. You'll hear that this version of events he described doesn't really match up with what Ms. Osinski described. Sean's statements don't really match up with anyone else's statements about what happened. Doesn't really match up with the other evidence. You'll hear about a scream that Sean says he heard, but you'll also hear that when asked questions about that, he couldn't provide details about, or he provided inconsistent details about when the scream happened, where they were, who was where. No one else remembered this. Ms. Osinski is a self-proclaimed light sleeper, very light sleeper. She didn't wake up. No one else remembered this. No one else ever said that they remembered Martin having an accident that night. And as you'll hear, even Sean only said this in a later interview. After initially telling the detective point blank, Martin didn't get in trouble that day. Martin didn't have an accident that day. It was only after further questioning by the detective, a later interview, that Sean eventually gave them what they wanted. Said, oh yeah, he actually did have an accident. You're gonna hear there are a lot of problems with Sean's statements. These statements that the prosecution has built their entire narrative around. You'll see the actual recordings of Sean's interviews. So I won't go into all the problems that there are, but you'll see that there are problems with what Sean actually said versus what was described, the context and questioning that led to these statements. You're gonna hear that every adult in Sean's life really agreed that Sean mixed up his days. He got confused about when things happened, and the evidence supports that's what happened here. Third person in the house, Alex Thrailkill, his little sister. Alex was also interviewed by police the same day as Sean's first interview. Alex, in that first interview, said that she was awake. She said she was watching a movie. Alex, though, remembered being in the living room with Mr. Thrailkill and Martin and Sean being in their room together. Alex doesn't remember an accident. She didn't remember a scream. She didn't remember Mr. Thrailkill going in the room. Alex, unlike Sean, though, was never interviewed again. She didn't provide the explanation they were looking for. And so when Sean kept being called back for interview after interview, Alex wasn't. The only other person in the house that night was Mr. Thrailkill. You'll see that overall, he was very consistent in his account of what happened. He was very cooperative with the initial investigation. He went in from interview after interview, provided all the information that he could, but he didn't know what happened. He was zoned in, playing his game. He had his headphones on. He wasn't paying attention, and he couldn't provide much information at all. Mr. Thrailkill was the big man at the house. He never denied being awake. He was the easy person to blame. And as the investigation went on, he became the clear focus. The police and prosecution were desperately scrambling for everything and anything that might support this version of events, this narrative. But as you will hear, they come up lacking because Martin was sick, not strangled. You're gonna hear, you just heard a little summary of a lot of evidence that isn't really related to what happened that night. It isn't connected to the actual events of what happened. You're gonna hear about how Martin got injured in 2012. The skull fracture, I think, is how the prosecution referred to it. And you'll hear this evidence as some sort of evidence that Mr. Thrailkill had a motive over 4 years later to commit a murder that they've charged in this case. But as you'll hear, this incident was investigated and quickly found to be accidental by everyone involved in the investigation. You're not going to hear from any investigators who actually looked into this case, because all I would tell you is that nothing has changed. Their finding is the same as it was in 2012, that this was an accident. Nevertheless, you'll hear this evidence about this incident pointed to you now to suggest prior abuse of Martin where there was none. To rewrite history to argue this accident should now be viewed as evidence of some long-harbored motive for murder. That's just because the actual evidence of murder isn't there, because Martin wasn't murdered. You're going to hear about a lot of suspicious behaviors. As you'll hear, the same supposed bad facts for Mr. Thrailkill, though, aren't bad for others. You'll hear officers describe how Mr. Thrailkill's behavior, demeanor was weird, not emotional enough. You also hear multiple officers reported him crying, but I guess not enough. He wasn't upset enough seeming. But everyone reacts to trauma differently. And as you'll hear, he was not the only one who didn't react to this situation in a way that might be considered normal. You'll hear how officers describe Miss Osinski, sobbing without tears, not emotional, too emotional. She can be heard on a recording from that night just hours after Martin was pronounced dead, laughing for an ongoing period of time with Officer Gregory, now Detective Gregory. You'll hear how when Miss Osinski got to the ER, she didn't carry Martin in herself. She ran in and got people to come back to the car. And when asked about this, she said she wasn't ready to touch him again. You'll hear how she got rid of all Martin's belongings a few weeks after he died. Now, none of this is evidence that she harmed Martin. None of this is evidence that she didn't love him. What it shows is that everyone deals with trauma in their own way, and that it doesn't mean anything. Prosecution's also going to stress this suspicious text to his dad that says, where Mr. Thrailkill says that he thought Sean did it, right after Martin was taken to the hospital. And again, at that time, everyone was trying to wrap their head around what happened, trying to rationalize and explain to themselves in their own head how this could have happened. You'll hear Miss Osinski told numerous people all kinds of stories about how Martin died. You'll hear, as soon as she got to the emergency room, she was talking about how Martin had been swimming all day, and she thought that there was delayed drowning or something that she had read about. You'll hear that as the weeks went on, she continued to tell stories to her friends, her coworkers, Martin's teacher who brought her bread. She said that Martin suffocated, that he choked on vomit. They didn't have answers at that time. So the way people react to that is to come up with their own. And that's what they were doing. The last thing you're going to hear a lot about, the last thing that I'm going to talk about, you all hearing a lot about, is that Mr. Thrailkill moved to Florida in 2017. Now, the prosecution described him leaving Colorado and described this move as flight, described him as being on the lam. But Mr. Thrailkill was not hiding. He had a driver's license. He had a good job at Goodwill. He paid taxes. They just didn't have the evidence to arrest him. He moved out of state. They characterized it as flight. It's all part of this narrative, this language. So you'll hear about the autopsy report that Mr. Zentner was citing. It was completed a few weeks after Martin's death. I think a few weeks. Concluded that Martin's death was a homicide. But as you'll hear, autopsies are not done in a bubble. The coroner, Dr. Havlik, had information from police. He knew what detectives suspected. And strangulation could cause a lot of the signs, the obvious signs on Martin. But so could a lot of things. When looking for a homicide, it's easy to miss or downplay clues that don't fit. Clues that, along with other indicators of asphyxiation as cited, show that something else was going on. Clues that later led to further medical testing and ultimately revealed the possibility, the real possibility that Martin stopped breathing because he was sick, not because he was strangled. But at that time in 2016, they didn't do all the testing. Dr. Havlik's report was just another piece in a puzzle that investigators kept trying to jam into place that just didn't fit. As you'll hear, these problems with the case, with the evidence, were clear to investigators. The case was left open, essentially cold, after their initial investigation in 2016. Not because Grand Junction Police Department dropped the ball on investigating properly the death of a 6-year-old boy. Not because there was new evidence that needed to be gathered, because essentially nothing was gathered during that period. The evidence will show that the investigation stopped essentially because even though they followed all the leads, did a thorough investigation, there wasn't a clear answer as to who done it. The evidence didn't prove what couldn't be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Couldn't prove there was a murder where there was none. And so years went by. Essentially no developments until 2023. New detective on the case, at least, was assigned, personally invested in providing closure, determined to provide answers after years of uncertainty. There were 4 people in the house that night, and Mr. Thrailkill was the easy target, the only man who said he was awake, the easy one to blame. Decided the evidence was good enough, stood by that conclusion, even though, as you'll hear, was made without having all the information. So they wanted an explanation, and it's easier to cast a villain than blame a virus. You're going to hear during trial about the new exams, testing, the sampling that wasn't done in 2016, that showed actual evidence, facts, science, that provide an answer that wasn't seen in 2016. An answer based on more than just emotion, suspicion, an explanation that isn't lacking in clarity, that isn't based on emotions or desire to punish or to hold someone responsible, but that can be seen in the evidence. That Martin died of some combination of pneumonia, aspiration, asthma, not murder. The answer to almost a decade-long mystery, that this was not a murder. You'll hear from Dr. Auer, who analyzed the slides taken from Martin's lung tissue. You'll hear about how his expertise is in lungs. You'll hear how this is something that could be very easily missed by someone who doesn't have that expertise. And you'll hear how objective evidence provides a conclusion that none of the people at the house ever could. the real possibility that Martin stopped breathing because he was sick, not strangled. So all we ask really during this trial is that you listen carefully. Listen carefully to everything presented. Listen carefully for all the things you don't hear, all the evidence you won't see, and look hard and think hard about what is actually being presented. Look past speculation, suspicion, what's actually there. Because when you do that, the evidence will show that Mr. Thrailkill is not guilty, that Martin was sick, not strangled. This was not a murder. That's why we'll ask you to find Mr. Thrailkill not guilty. Thank you.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take a short recess, just 10 minutes for you. And if you'll go back to the jury room, please remember all the instructions during the recesses. Thank you. Please rise for our jury. Two people versus Darin Thrailkill. Mr. Thrailkill does appear in custody represented by Ms. Parham and Ms. Marasich. Ms. Mayer and Mr. Zentner are appearing for the people. We're outside the presence of our jury. Ms. Mayer.
Thank you, Judge.
Sure.
I mentioned to defense counsel on the break, during Mr. Zentner's opening statement, the defendant's family members were seated behind us and blurted out some opposition to something that Mr. Zentner was saying. Ms. Weimer heard it specifically, and we're just asking the court to advise people in the courtroom to not respond out loud. It had to do with when the other children arrived and her responding, "That's not right." Just that,
Okay.
I just want to bring it to the court's attention.
I don't see if those people are in the courtroom. I don't think, oh, over here,
the-
this way, okay.
They moved sides to the
Oh,
defense.
thank you. All right. So if y'all can just keep your emotions in check and not say things out loud, we'd appreciate it so much. Thanks. Anything else before we invite the jury back in?
No, Judge.
No. thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks. We're ready for our jury, please. Thanks.
Just a quick little admonishment by the prosecutor because they just can't live with themselves if they don't say anything.
And we're getting ready to call the first, or the people are going to call their first witness. So just for live streaming purposes, there is an order of sequestration in place. The witnesses are not to view the testimony of other witnesses. And I guess before the jury arrives, I'll just add, there is a warning on the screen for live streaming, and then the media broadcast at Law and Crime, there's a notice with regard to witness sequestration. If any witness is watching either of those, please follow those instructions. Thank you. And do not watch the testimony of other witnesses until you're released from your subpoena.
Please rise.
All right, thank you. Please be seated. For the record, our jury has joined us back in the courtroom. Thank you. The people's first witness, Mr. Zentner.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people called Jason Evans.
Mr. Evans, if you'll have a seat in the black chair up here by the microphone. Once you get seated, I'll give you an oath.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You want me to do it from a seated position?
Yeah, you can be seated. Thanks. I think it's easier. Sometimes people have a hard time after I give them the oath, and so. Sweet. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Zentner, you're direct whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Evans, could you please state and spell your name?
Yes, my name is Jason Evans. My last name is spelled E-V-A-N-S.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Evans?
I'm employed and work as a forensic engineer.
And what do you do as a forensic engineer?
I'm an engineer that specializes in photogrammetry, incident scene reconstruction, and failure analysis, specifically in regards to litigation on the civil side of work.
Hey, where do you live and who do you work for?
I live down in Bayfield, Colorado, but I work for Knott Laboratory, which is based out of Denver, Colorado.
How long have you been working in that capacity?
I've been working as a forensic engineer for just under 5 years now.
What did you do before working as a engineer?
Prior to working as an engineer, I was a police officer for the Grand Junction Police Department.
For what years were you a police officer with the Grand Junction Police Department?
I was a police officer with Grand Junction Police Department between the years of 2016 to right at the beginning of, the end of 2020.
And that is when you moved on into civil work?
Yes, that's when I moved in and was hired as an engineer for Knott Laboratory.
As you worked as a police officer with Grand Junction Police Department from 2016 to 2020, did you have the degrees at the time that allowed you to be an engineer?
Yes. Prior to being a police officer, I was in the Navy as a nuclear trained electrician. And during that time, I obtained an associate's degree in criminal justice, but then also a bachelor's degree in nuclear engineering technologies. And while working as a police officer, I obtained my master's in business administration with an emphasis in data analytics.
Going back to 2016, what were some of your duties and responsibilities? What was your title with the Grand Junction Police Department?
Sir, can you repeat the year?
2016.
In 2016, I was working as a patrol officer.
What do you do as a patrol officer?
As a patrol officer, I was tasked with answering calls for service, doing proactive policing, like performing traffic stops, contacting individuals or any issues I see in the city, but also taking reports as needed as a police officer on patrol.
Do you recall being on duty on July 2nd of 2016?
I do.
Do you recall doing some investigation with respect to the death of Martin Osinski on that date?
Yes, I did.
What information did you have that caused you to become involved in the death of Martin Osinski?
I was dispatched after the initial call to go to 585 25 and a half road, trailer number 67. Martin was at the hospital and I was asked to go to that address to start an investigation.
Did you have any information while you were going to that address here in Grand Junction? Did you have any information about why Martin was at the hospital or have any information about Martin's age or anything?
Mr. Zentner, do you want to respond to the objection?
If I could just lay one more piece of foundation, Judge.
Okay, the objection sustained for now then. Thanks.
Did you have, yes or no, did you have any information about Martin Osinski that factored into your actions in going to that address?
Yes, there were call notes in the dispatch call along with Officer Gregory was at the hospital and relayed some information to us.
As you were going to that address, I guess, what was your plan? Were you going to the address with other officers or what was the point in you going to that address?
I was dispatched to that with Officer Goodell at the time to just inquire because there were some questions about the manner in which Martin had been injured or what the reason he was at the hospital.
Did you know that Officer Goodell was going to the address with you or that you would meet him there?
Yeah, we were both dispatched to the call and just like standard police protocol, we would get together prior to the call and then walk to the address.
Did you in fact respond to that trailer number 67 with Officer Goodell?
Yes, I did respond to 585 25 and a half road, trailer number 67, Officer Goodell.
Thank you. What do you remember happened next?
As Officer Goodell and I we parked away from it, so we were walking up on foot. Our patrol cars were parked just a short distance away. And as we approached the address, there was a heavier set male that was sitting on the porch of the trailer. And it appeared to be that he was waiting for somebody.
Did this heavier set male, as you described, who appeared to be waiting for somebody, did that seem interesting to you? What did you expect to see when you arrived?
It was a bit out of place. The call wasn't coming from the address. There wasn't somebody who called to speak to the police. So it just stood out to me that there was somebody specifically waiting for somebody, and it just kind of seemed odd at the time and it really stood out to me.
Did that male who was waiting outside of the address, did that male identify himself?
Yes, Officer Goodell and I walked up and we contacted the male, and he had verbally identified himself as Darin Thrailkill.
And do you recognize Mr. Thrailkill in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
And could you please describe him, where he's sitting, what he's wearing?
Yes, sir. He's to your left, and he's wearing a darker sports coat, a tan to gray looking button-up shirt, and a bluish tie.
Judge, will the record reflect identification of Mr. Thrailkill?
Do you have an objection, Ms. Marisic?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the record will also reflect the witnesses identified Mr. Thrailkill. Thank you.
After Mr. Thrailkill identified himself to you and Officer Goodell, did any other officers respond to that scene?
Yes, approximately the time Officer Bridge arrived on scene as well.
So at this point, there's you, Officer Goodell, and Officer Bridge, correct?
Yes, sir.
What happened after Officer Bridge arrived?
After Officer Bridge arrived, I then asked Mr. Thrailkill what had happened at the address in regards to Martin.
And what did Mr. Thrailkill tell you in response to you asking him what happened to Martin?
Mr. Thrailkill informed me that he had been playing video games inside the trailer. And during that time, he had his headphones on. And he said then he started feeling like he was ready to go to sleep, get ready to go to bed. And he noted that there were 2 children in the living room area along with his wife or girlfriend, I don't recall exactly which one he identified her as, were asleep in the living room area. And he got up and then he went to go check on Martin. He then noted that Martin was sleeping in an odd position, and he stated that the dog was kind of acting strange. At that time, Mr. Thrailkill said he turned on the lights, and he noted that Martin was a strange color and wasn't breathing. And he then stated that he tried to wake Martin and was unable to do so. So he contacted his mother and woke her up. And then he stated that he carried Martin to the car, and she drove him to the hospital.
When Mr. Thrailkill made these statements to you, did Mr. Thrailkill note to you where if 2 of his other children were in the home and where they were?
Yes, those children were asleep in the living room area of this single wide trailer.
You had testified that Mr. Thrailkill told you that he had turned on a light. In what room did he tell you that he turned on this light?
I believe he stated in the bedroom that Martin was in a different location than the other 2 siblings, in a separate bedroom.
You had testified that Mr. Thrailkill told his mother, woke his mother up. What do you mean by that? Whose mother?
Martin's mother.
Okay. And did you identify her, or did you know who she was from information that you had?
Based off the call information, she was later identified as Crystal Osinski. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly.
And you had testified earlier that Mr. Thrailkill told you that he carried Martin to the car. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then did Mr. Thrailkill tell you how Martin and Crystal left?
They stated they left in a vehicle and went to the hospital.
And these are all the statements. Did you write a report that memorialized your contact with Mr. Thrailkill on July 2nd, 2016?
Yes, I did.
And have you recently reviewed that report?
Yes, I did.
And were the statements that you just provided that Mr. Thrailkill told you, were those memorialized in that report?
Yes.
Were there any other statements that Mr. Thrailkill told you that you don't recall? Or, I mean, that you did not put in your report?
Not in that initial contact of when I spoke with Mr. Thrailkill.
Okay. At some point in the subsequent years, did you remember other statements that Mr. Thrailkill told you?
Yes, later in the interaction, Officer Goodell started speaking and kind of taking lead, speaking to Mr. Thrailkill, and I recalled him describing some other statements about possibly what happened to Martin. And based on how I recall them, they were something to the effect of maybe a pillow, caused him to have these injuries, or maybe he hit his head. Again, I was in the process of just backing Officer Goodell at that time, so those were overheard as he was speaking with Officer Goodell.
Okay, thank you. After you had spoken to Mr. Thrailkill and then kind of stepped back and allowed Officer Goodell to interact with him, what else did you do? What else did you observe?
So something that stood out to me when I took that initial statement from Mr. Thrailkill, it was just different. There wasn't a terrible lot of perceived emotion from myself that I saw that. It just didn't seem.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation and relevance.
Mr. Zentner?
I can lay some additional foundation on that, Judge.
Okay, the objection sustained.
Thank you.
Sure.
At some point, you had testified that after you had spoken to Mr. Thrailkill earlier, then Mr. Thrailkill was interacting with Officer Goodell, right?
Yes, sir.
At some point when Mr. Thrailkill was interacting with Officer Goodell, did you learn anything about Martin's condition?
Yes. As Officer Goodell was speaking with Mr. Thrailkill and finishing some paperwork with him, I was informed via our police radio that Martin had passed away, had died.
What did you do with that information that Martin Hozinski had passed away and died?
Once Officer Goodell had finished what he was completing, I informed Mr. Thrailkill that Martin had passed away and died.
What was Mr. Thrailkill's reaction to when you told him that Martin had indeed passed away?
Initially, Mr. Thrailkill got very boisterous and loud and very animated verbally, and then very quickly was able to compose himself and then continue to speak with Officer Goodell as he asked him questions. During that short interaction and response, he didn't cry or appear to have any of those.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Mr. Zentner?
I'm not sure what the objection is, but we'll leave the testimony as he didn't appear to cry. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay,
Objection to that part.
No objection to that part? Okay, thank you.
thank you. You were about to say something else, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that in terms of the moment you told Mr. Thrailkill that Martin had died and your observations of Mr. Thrailkill.
Mhm.
And then earlier in your testimony today, you were talking about just Mr. Thrailkill's general demeanor during your initial contact with him. Before going to 585 and a half or 585, 25 and a half road, the trailer park, right? Before going there on July 2nd of 2016, had you interacted with people who had been at death scenes?
Yes, sir.
And had you interacted with people who had received word of unexpected deaths?
Yes, sir.
And had you interacted with people who had received word of the death of their children or even adults who died unexpectedly?
Yes, sir.
And so without speculating as to Mr. Thrailkill's state of mind, based solely on your observations, how did the defendant's outward reaction when he heard Martin pass, I guess, compare with what you've observed in the past?
Mr. Thrailkill's response to the information that Martin had passed away wasn't consistent with my observations of other individuals who had been informed of a tragic death or unexpected death.
Thank you. One moment. What were some of the observations that you had made with people in the past who had learned about these untimely deaths? How did it differ from Mr. Thrailkill's?
Individuals respond differently, but generally there was a period of time of immense emotion. How that was displayed was different between individuals. Sometimes people were highly quiet, but intense. Sometimes there was a lot of verbal acuity, people speaking loudly, and outward tears and emotions just boiling over. I would just overly describe when people receive that type of information, it was very intense and uncomfortable is the best way to describe as a police officer, as somebody who's trying to process that information that you just shared with them.
Versus your observations of Mr. Thrailkill's behavior?
Yes, Mr. Thrailkill's behavior wasn't consistent with what I just described.
Did Mr. Thrailkill ever ask, and did you ever observe Mr. Thrailkill ask if he could get a ride to the hospital?
No, sir.
Did he ever ask anybody to watch his kids so he could drive himself to the hospital?
No, sir.
Did he ever ask about any concern for the health or welfare of Martin Osinski?
Not that I recall.
Did he ever ask once about Martin's condition before you told him?
Not that I recall.
When you told him Martin had died, did he even ask how he died?
Not that I recall.
After you interacted with Mr. Thrailkill, did you collect some information from a cell phone?
Yes, Officer Goodell got permission and consent from Mr. Thrailkill to search his cell phone, and Officer Goodell then got Mr. Thrailkill's cell phone and handed it to me.
Okay. And did you observe any of the phone numbers or information on the cell phone?
Yes, immediately I went and looked at the recent call history, and there had been two recently received cell phone calls on his phone.
Do you recall putting that information in the report that you mentioned earlier that summarized your involvement in this matter on July 2nd, 2016?
I did, sir.
Did you put to whom the calls were, the receiving calls? Did you put information like that in your report?
I did, sir.
Do you remember the details as to contact names or numbers that you put in your report?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Well, he's just asking if he recalls them,
I guess I'm
so
one
not
question.
actually what the numbers are, so I'm overruling the objection. Thanks.
Yeah, do you remember what information you saw, and do you remember putting that in your report?
Yes.
And do you remember what that information was?
Yes, I do, sir.
Objection calls for hearsay at this point.
Okay.
He's just asking him if he remembers what the information is, not what the information actually was, so the objection's overruled.
And was the information related to calls going out and calls coming in?
Yes, sir.
And could you see that information just by looking at the timestamps on the phone itself?
Yes, there were timestamps, a text of who called and a phone number.
Great. And without looking at your report, do you remember from whom those calls or to whom those calls were made and what times?
There was a call to a contact that was labeled Dad.
Your Honor, motion to strike the hearsay that was just elicited.
Presenter.
Thank you, Judge. This is not a communicative assertion. This is information from a cell phone that was provided by the defendant to Mr. Evans. It's not hearsay. It's not a communicative assertion. It's just information from a cell phone, the face of a cell phone. To the extent the court does believe it's hearsay, it's the defendant's statements, really, the information that he put in his own phone. But it's just, it's identification of calls that were coming in terms of who, time, and phone number, and that's not hearsay, Judge. Thank you.
All right, the objection sustained.
Thank you.
Motion to strike.
And the jury's to disregard the witness's last statement. And let's see, is it Miss Ash who has her hand up from the jury box?
Someone just handed me a question that they wanted to have looked at.
Oh, one of the jurors did? Okay, so just wait until the end, ladies and gentlemen, of the witness's testimony. And then if you have a question, we'll ask you to hand those notes to the bailiff is how we'll do it. Sorry, I didn't describe that process better to y'all, but at the end of the witness's testimony, sometimes you'll think of a question and then they answer it along the way or something. And so just wait until the end and then the bailiff will collect any questions from you. Thanks so much. Mr. Zentner.
This address of 585 25 and a half road trailer 67, is that in Mesa County, Colorado?
It is.
And going back, I've asked you a lot of questions about the information in your report and how you documented things in your report. Nowadays, we hear a lot about body cam footage and that sort of thing. In 2016, did you guys on patrol actually show up with body cam and recording everything or not?
No, we did not have body worn cameras at the time of this incident.
Great, thank you. One moment, please. And Your Honor, if we could approach, please.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Oh, were you finished with your direct?
Yes,
Sorry.
Your Honor.
Okay, I
Thank
didn't
you.
understand that. Thanks. Ms. Marsuch, you're cross whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, so is it Mr. Evans now?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm referring to you properly.
Thank you,
So Mr. Evans, you were a police officer, I think you said from 2016 to 2020, is that right?
No, ma'am. From 2014 through the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021.
Okay, and that time was with the Grand Junction Police Department.
Yes, it was, ma'am.
About 2 years into your time as a police officer, that's when this case took place, right?
Yes, ma'am. Approximately that long.
Now, there were not body worn camera at that time, right?
No, there was not, ma'am.
So you were not wearing a body worn camera on July 2nd, 2016.
No, I was not, ma'am.
You were not using any other kind of recording device on that day either.
No, ma'am.
There wasn't any Grand Junction Police Department policy mandating that you record things either, right?
No, there was not at that time.
Right, because back then we just didn't have that capacity, right?
The Grand Junction Department did not have that capacity. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You did have the capacity, of course, to write reports, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's something that officers have done for decades and decades, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You'd agree with me that before things were recorded consistently on body worn camera, reports were relied on more, right?
And the individual officers. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Because there was no recording of what had happened, right?
There was no body worn cameras. Yes, in this case. So
Okay.
yes.
So your report is vital for documenting evidence, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you do receive different training as a police officer on how to document in your reports, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You'd agree with me it's important to be thorough in those reports, right?
Yes, ma'am.
To document everything and anything that might be of evidentiary value in a case.
Yeah, to the best of our abilities. Yes, ma'am.
Right. And that's what you did in this case, right?
To the best of my abilities. Yes, ma'am.
You knew that this was a case involving a deceased 6-year-old child, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you knew it was extremely important for you to document everything and anything of evidentiary value in your report, right?
Is it important? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you knew that when you were writing the report, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you testified earlier about some statements that Mr. Thrailkill made on July 2nd, 2016, okay?
Yes,
Want
ma'am.
to talk to you more about those.
Okay.
So you said that you overheard Mr. Thrailkill saying a potential cause of death of this child, right?
I said that may have caused this incident. At that, like I said, at that point, I don't know what caused his death.
Right, but the statement that you're saying you heard was that it was maybe a pillow, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That caused the death of this child, right?
Don't believe I said caused the death, but yeah, caused the issue. Yes. The incident.
Okay, and the incident is a deceased kid, right?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
So you overheard a suspect say this potential cause of death, maybe a pillow. You did not document that in your report.
No, I did not, ma'am.
Now, that wasn't the only thing that you heard Mr. Thrailkill say, right?
No, it was not the only thing I heard him say, ma'am.
You also said today that you heard Mr. Thrailkill positing that maybe Martin had hit his head, right?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am.
Again, describing what had happened potentially to
He's
this
nervous.
dead child, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, you did not document that in your report.
No, I did not, ma'am.
Now, you collected a statement from Mr. Thrailkill about what had happened kind of leading up to Martin going over to the hospital, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That was an initial account, not a prolonged interview, right?
No, it was a short interaction, ma'am.
Okay. And then he spoke with Officer Goodell too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, he was asked questions about what had happened leading up to Martin going to the hospital, right?
I believe so. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then Officer Bridge came, right?
He was there prior to that interaction, prior to the initial response.
Well, then Officer Bridge also asked Mr. Thrailkill what had happened leading up to Martin going to the hospital, right?
I don't recall, ma'am, if he interviewed her as well. Him as well.
Okay. You just recall your interview with him.
Yes, and some statements I overheard.
Okay. So you don't recall in excruciating detail everything about this case?
Not excruciating detail, no, ma'am.
Now, we were talking about, you had mentioned that Mr. Thrailkill was working on some paperwork, I think, with Officer Goodell
Yes, ma'am.
earlier, right? He was asking Mr. Thrailkill to have permission to collect his phone, right?
I believe, yes, he was filling out a consent to search his cell phone for him. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Mr. Thrailkill gave that consent, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That was voluntary, right?
Yes, ma'am. It was voluntary.
He did not have to do that.
No, he did not, ma'am.
Officer Goodell also asked for consent to enter Unit 67, right?
I believe so. Yes, that's pretty standard procedure, ma'am.
Okay. And again, Mr. Thrailkill consented, right?
Yes, ma'am.
He let the officers go into his home, right?
Yes, ma'am.
He didn't obstruct their entry in any kind of way, right?
Not that I recall, ma'am. No.
That would be an important detail for you to recall, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so he did not obstruct any kind of entry.
Yeah, like I said, not that I recall. Absolutely.
He let the officers go into the house and do their searching, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you testified earlier that you thought it was strange that he was outside when officers arrived. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This was a small home, right?
Yes, a single wide trailer is a small home. Yes, ma'am.
There were 2 children inside that small home, right?
Yes, ma'am.
In the living room, right?
I don't recall exactly where they were inside the residence when we were there, ma'am.
Okay. They were asleep, right?
I do remember them being asleep. Yes, ma'am.
So Mr. Thrailkill was just outside on the like porch way into the small home, right?
There was a small porch on the front of the residence. Yes, ma'am. And that's where he was standing.
Yeah, that's where he was. He didn't run from police, right?
No, ma'am.
He didn't hide from police, right?
No, ma'am.
He didn't barricade himself somewhere away from the police, right?
No, ma'am.
He waited until the police came and he spoke to you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
He spoke to not only you, but the other officers as well, right?
Yes, ma'am.
He not only spoke to you, but he provided various consents for you to do your jobs, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, part of him providing, his statement of what had occurred was a written statement, right?
I don't recall a written statement, ma'am.
Okay, so you don't recall if he was asked to fill out a written statement?
Shortly after my described interaction, I left and started answering other calls for service, ma'am. So after the document on the bottom there, and as Officer Goodall was speaking with him, I got asked to go and leave and go handle other calls for service.
Okay, so I see. So after you kind of got your initial kind of interaction, you pass it off to the next officer and they were doing their jobs on the case.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you don't know what Mr. Thrailkill asked the other officers after you kind of passed off the case, right?
No, ma'am.
Because at that point you had kind of moved on to the next section of your job, right?
Yes.
Asked and answered. Objection.
Are you just leading for foundation purposes for your next question? or-
Yes.
Okay, the objection's overruled.
So you had testified earlier, right, that Mr. Thrailkill didn't ask you questions about what had happened to Martin, right?
That is true.
You don't know if he asked anyone else, though, right?
No, I do not know.
You testified earlier that that Mr. Thrailkill didn't ask you if he could go to the hospital, right?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? for me?
Yeah. You testified earlier that Mr. Thrailkill didn't ask you if he could go to the hospital, right?
Yes, that is correct, ma'am.
You don't know if he asked anyone else that, right?
No, I do not know.
Now, I want to kind of talk a little bit more about what that setting was, right? Police were interviewing Mr. Thrailkill about what had happened on scene, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Police were searching his home, right?
I know Officer Bridge went into the residence and was going to take some pictures, but other than that, I don't know what he did.
Okay. And his children were there at the house, right?
There were children at the residence. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Mr. Thrailkill stayed on scene until the officers asked him to go to the police department, right?
That would have been after the time I was on scene, ma'am.
Okay, so that's just something you don't know, right?
Yes, again, after what I testified to, I went off and did other calls for service, ma'am.
Now let's shift and talk about your observations of Mr. Thrailkill's kind of demeanor when you did have this interaction with him, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So you said earlier that it just didn't match for you with other experiences that you've had with people receiving this kind of traumatic news, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You agree with me, though, that everyone responds differently.
Yes, ma'am.
You had said that in your experience, people would have, I think you used the words, an initial intense reaction, right?
Yes, ma'am.
An extreme reaction, right?
That sounds consistent with what I said. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you'd agree that you thought back in 2016 that Mr. Thrailkill initially acted extremely upset, right?
Yes.
He was able, after being extremely upset, to calm down, right?
Yes. In my report, it says quickly collected himself. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, collected himself to answer your questions, right?
Mine and Officer Goodell's. Yes, ma'am.
Right, and facilitate the police investigation into Martin's death.
Yes, ma'am.
I could have one moment, Your Honor.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Zentner, redirect, please.
Sure, Judge. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Evans, in terms of your testimony that you had to leave the scene to go on to other service calls, around midnight on a July evening in 2016, what would have been your staffing level with Grand Junction Police Department in terms of patrol officers?
At that time, we may have had approximately 5 officers and then a couple supervisors, so under 15 officers that were able to answer calls for service in Grand Junction.
In terms of Ms. Mersich asking you about noting Mr. Thrailkill's, I guess, lack of appropriate response, you did note in your report that his response to the news of Martin's death was not consistent with the expected response of a grieving parent.
Yes, that's what I wrote in my report, sir.
Back in 2016 and maybe even today, when patrol officers would respond to a scene where a crime may have been committed, but somebody had passed away. When responding to a scene where somebody had passed away, was it customary for patrol officers to go and have in-depth interviews with witnesses or suspects? Or would you have left that to, you mentioned earlier in your testimony, there would have been sergeants or detectives on duty at the time?
So as a patrol officer at that time, and I would assume still, your job is for initially do those preliminary investigations, and then more complex crimes like a death investigation, a detective, a sergeant would make an evaluation of whether a detective will come out and take over the investigation. And I believe a sergeant at that time would have been the person who told me to go out and answer other calls for service.
And finally, going back to kind of the information you knew when you responded to trailer number 67 right over here at the trailer park. Did you have information that Darin Thrailkill was, a suspect and you were there to arrest him, or did you just know of him as the father to this child?
I didn't know who he was initially when we got the calls for service. All we had known is that a child was at the hospital and had some injuries that were concerning, and that he had prior been at that address of 585 28.5 Road, trailer number 67. We had no suspects, no initial concern at that point. We were just investigating what had happened.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Ms. Marsich, can you recross?
No, thank
No?
you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the jury for the witness? If so, if you could write them down, and if you'd raise your hand to let me know you have a question or There are no questions from the, oh, we do. Okay, I didn't see. Thanks. Thank you. So the bailiff has collected the question. If the lawyers could approach, please feel free to stretch, ladies and gentlemen. The question is as follows. How do you know it was not shock or just overwhelming?
That's difficult to know in regards to what you're asking in regards to if it's to response of Mr. Thrailkill's response, like I said, it just was not consistent to my prior observations when I saw somebody having that, receiving that tragic information.
Mr. Zentner, any follow-up questions?
No, Judge.
Ms. Marsic?
No, thank you.
No. Any other questions from the jury for this witness? So if you'd raise a hand, you're all good. All right, thank you, sir. You're free to go.
Sir, can I be released from my
So is he
subpoena?
under subpoena? And if so, is he released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection from the defense?
No objection.
You're released from your subpoena and free to go. Thank you. You're welcome. Just a few minutes before noon, did you think it's a good time to take our lunch recess?
Yes, Your Honor, I believe so.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and take our lunch recess, ladies and gentlemen. Please be back to the jury commissioner's office on the 3rd floor at 1:15, and we'll see you back then. Thanks.
So it's noon there in Colorado. 2 o'clock my time, Eastern time, Michigan. So in about an hour and 20 minutes, they're going to be back.